Papa said, if anything happened to him, find the man with the scar. He owes us everything, the 12-year-old girl told the most dangerous gunfighter in Nevada. What she didn't know was that the debt wasn't money. It was a life he'd taken, and now she was asking him to become the father he'd destroyed. The Silver Moon Saloon in Carson City was the kind of place where men went to forget their names and remember their sins. Smoke hung thick as fog, cards slapped against worn tables, and whiskey flowed like prayers in a drought. In the darkest corner, where shadows gathered like conspirators, sat Nathaniel Cross. They called him the Reaper for good reason. The scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw told only part of his story. The rest was written in Boot Hill graveyards across 3 states. At 38, he'd killed more men than fever or consumption, and he wore that reputation like armor. The saloon doors creaked open, letting in dust and dying sunlight. What walked through wasn't unusual. Travelers, drifters, and broken souls found their way here daily. But this visitor was different. A girl, maybe 12, with tangled brown hair and a dress that had seen too many miles. She clutched a worn leather satchel against her chest like it held her last breath. Her eyes swept the room, searching until they found his table. She walked straight toward him, boot heels clicking against warped floorboards. The saloon grew quieter with each step. Even the piano player's fingers hesitated on the keys. Nathaniel didn't look up from his cards. Saloon's no place for children. Papa said, if anything happened to him, find the man with the scar. Her voice was small but steady. He owes us everything. The cards went still in Nathaniel's hands. Slowly, he raised his eyes. The girl stood there, chin raised, staring at the scar that marked him like Cain. Your papa have a name. Thomas Fletcher. He collected debts for the territorial government. She opened the satchel with trembling fingers. He wrote it all down. Every name, every amount, including yours. Nathaniel's blood turned to ice water. Thomas Fletcher. The honest man with honest eyes who'd come collecting a debt that wasn't owed. The man Nathaniel had shot down in a fit of whiskey-soaked rage 3 months ago. The man whose death still woke him in cold sweats. What's your name, girl? Rebecca Fletcher. But everyone calls me Becca. She pulled out a ledger, pages yellowed with age and careful handling. Papa kept records of everything. He said debt collectors have to be honest, or the whole system falls apart. Nathaniel stood slowly. The saloon held its breath. Come on, this ain't the place for such talk. He led her outside to the wooden porch, where evening shadows were beginning to claim the street. She followed without fear, which troubled him more than a dozen armed men would have. What kind of debt you think I owe? Becca opened the ledger to a page marked with red ribbon. Says here you borrowed $200 from the territorial fund. For your ranch. That was 4 years ago. With interest, it comes to $300 now. Nathaniel stared at the carefully written numbers. He remembered the loan, taken when drought had killed his cattle and hope seemed as scarce as rain. He'd repaid it 2 years later, in full, with receipts to prove it. Your papa came to collect on a debt already paid. That's not possible. Papa was careful. He never made mistakes. He made one with me. The words came out harder than he intended, and it got him killed. Becca stepped back, eyes wide. You shot Papa? Nathaniel nodded slowly. I was drunk, angry. He came to my ranch, showed me papers that didn't make sense, said I still owed money I'd already paid. I told him to leave. He wouldn't. So He couldn't finish. The memory burned like acid in his throat. Becca clutched the ledger tighter. Papa never drank, never gambled, never lied. If he said you owed money, you owed money. Where's your mother, child? Died when I was 7. Fever. Tears began to track down her dusty cheeks. It's just been me and Papa since then. Was just me and Papa. Nathaniel felt something crack inside his chest. You got family? Somewhere to go? Number Papa was all I had." She looked up at him with eyes too old for her face. "He said if anything happened, find the man with the scar. He said you'd take care of me." The words hit him like bullets. "He said what?" "Before he left that last time, he was different. Scared, maybe. He made me promise that if he didn't come back, I'd find you. He said you had a good heart under all the anger." Nathaniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Good heart? Girl, I killed your father." "I know." Her voice was whisper quiet. "But you're still the only person left who knew him." She opened the satchel again and pulled out a photograph. Sepia-toned, edges worn soft by handling. It showed a man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, arm around a younger woman. Between them stood a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. "That's us," Becca said. "Before Mama got sick, Papa carried it everywhere." Nathaniel stared at the photograph. Thomas Fletcher looked different in the picture. Younger, happier, more like the man who'd taught his daughter that debt collectors had to be honest. "He was a good man," Nathaniel said finally. "He was my papa." Becca's voice broke. "And now he's gone, and I don't know what to do." Nathaniel knelt down so they were eye to eye. "What do you want from me, child?" "I want you to help me finish his work." She held up the ledger. "There are 17 other debts in here, people who owe money to the territory. Papa always said a job half done was no job at all." "And after that," Becca shrugged. "I don't know. Papa didn't tell me about after." Nathaniel studied her face. 12 years old and already carrying the weight of the world. Her father's daughter, through and through. "The debt I supposedly owe. You still think I need to pay it?" "Papa's records don't lie." "What if I told you I had receipts proving I already paid?" "I'd say Papa had them too, or he wouldn't have come." Nathaniel nodded slowly. The girl had a point. Thomas Fletcher hadn't struck him as careless or corrupt, which meant something else was going on. "All right, Miss Fletcher, I'll make you a deal." Becca wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "What kind of deal?" "I'll help you finish your papa's work. We'll track down every debt in that book. But when we're done, you let me take care of you. Proper care, school, food, a roof that doesn't leak." "Why would you do that?" Nathaniel touched the scar on his face. "Because I owe a debt that can't be paid with money, and maybe helping his daughter is the only way to settle it." They started the next morning. Becca rode behind him on his horse, the ledger tucked safely in her satchel. Their first stop was a ranch 20 miles south, where a man named Sullivan owed $47. "How do we know he'll pay?" Becca asked as they approached the weathered farmhouse. "We ask nice first. If that doesn't work—" Nathaniel patted the gun on his hip, but Sullivan paid without argument. $47 in silver coins counted out on his kitchen table while his wife served coffee and cornbread. He seemed relieved to clear the debt. "Your father was a fair man," Sullivan told Becca. "Always gave folks time to scrape together what they owed. Some collectors, they come in hard from the start." The second debt was trickier. Mary Hutchins, who owed $63 for a business license, claimed she'd already paid. But when Nathaniel asked to see her receipt, she couldn't produce one. "These things get lost," she said nervously. "Debts don't get lost," Becca replied, sounding exactly like her father. "They just get ignored." Mary paid. The third debtor tried to run. James Morrison saw them coming and bolted out his back door, leaving his wife to face the music. Nathaniel caught him before he reached his horse. "Please," Morrison begged. "I got children to feed." "So did my papa," Becca said quietly. That didn't stop him from doing his job. By the end of the week, they'd collected on 12 of the 17 debts. Each payment Becca recorded carefully in her father's ledger, her handwriting neat and precise. She had her father's methodical nature, his attention to detail. "You're good at this," Nathaniel observed one evening as they camped under stars. "Papa taught me." She looked up from the ledger. "He said numbers don't lie, but people do. So you always trust the numbers." "What about when the numbers are wrong?" "Papa said they never were. If they looked wrong, It was because someone was hiding something. The 15th debtor changed everything. Marcus Webb owned a cattle ranch in the foothills, prosperous enough to afford the $120 he owed. But when they arrived, Webb's foreman met them at the gate with a shotgun. "Mr. Webb, don't want visitors." "We're not visitors," Becca said firmly. "We're debt collectors. I know who you are, little girl, and I know what happened to your papa." Nathaniel's hand moved to his gun. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means you ain't welcome here." They made camp a mile away and waited for dark. Then Nathaniel left Becca with the horses and crept toward the ranch house. What he heard through the open window made his blood boil. "Told you Fletcher was getting too close. Had to be stopped. You said you'd handle it quiet-like." "I did. Made it look like a collection gone wrong. The Gunfighter Cross did the job for us. And the girl. She's with Cross now. If she keeps nosing around, she might end up like her papa." Nathaniel had heard enough. He slipped back to their camp, mind racing. Thomas Fletcher hadn't made a mistake. He'd been murdered for getting too close to something big. "What did you find?" Becca asked. Nathaniel knelt beside her, choosing his words carefully. "Your papa was right about the debts, but some folks don't want to pay what they owe. So we make them. It's not that simple, child. These men are dangerous." Becca's jaw set in a way that reminded him painfully of her father. "Papa said running from danger just means it catches you from behind." The confrontation came at dawn. Webb and 3 of his men rode into their camp, guns drawn. "Time to stop playing debt collector, little girl," Webb called out. "Your papa should have minded his own business." "Collecting debts was his business," Becca replied, stepping out from behind their horse. "Not the kind of debts he was sniffing around. Some things are better left buried." Nathaniel emerged from the rocks where he'd been waiting. "Like murder." Webb's eyes narrowed. "Cross. Should have known you'd turn up eventually. Should have known you'd eventually need killing." The gunfight was swift and brutal. Nathaniel was faster than all 4 men combined. When the smoke cleared, Marcus Webb and his men lay still in the dust. Becca ran to Nathaniel, who was kneeling beside Webb's body. In the dead man's coat pocket was a leather folder filled with documents. Receipts, altered ledgers, correspondence with territorial officials. "What is it?" Becca asked. "Proof." Nathaniel stood, folder in hand. "Your papa wasn't just collecting debts. He was uncovering a conspiracy. Webb and his friends were stealing from the territorial fund, altering records to cover their tracks. So papa was right all along. He was right about everything, including the debt I supposedly owed. Webb's people altered the records to make it look like I hadn't paid. They needed me angry enough to kill your papa when he came asking questions." Becca stared at the documents. "They used you. They used us both." They rode to Carson City that afternoon, the evidence tucked safely in Becca's satchel alongside her father's ledger. The territorial officials were very interested in what they had to say. 2 weeks later, the conspiracy was front-page news in papers across Nevada. 6 men were arrested, including a territorial judge and a bank president. The stolen money was recovered and returned to the fund. Thomas Fletcher was vindicated, posthumously. "Papa would be proud," Becca said as they stood beside his grave in the Carson City cemetery. "He'd be proud of you," Nathaniel corrected. "You finished his work." "We finished it." Nathaniel had bought a small ranch outside town, close enough for Becca to attend school, but far enough away for them to have peace. It wasn't much, but it was honest ground. "What happens now?" Becca asked as they walked back toward their wagon. "Now, you go to school, learn to read and write proper, maybe become a teacher someday." "What about you?" Nathaniel smiled, the expression feeling strange on his scarred face. "I'm thinking about getting into the debt collection business. Seems like honest work, if you do it right." Becca grinned. "Papa always said debt collectors have to be honest, or the whole system falls apart." "Your papa was a smart man." "He was, and he chose you to take care of me. That makes you smart too." As they rode home through the Nevada sunset, Nathaniel realized something had changed inside him. The weight he'd carried since killing Thomas Fletcher was still there, but it felt different now. Not lighter, exactly, but purposeful. He couldn't bring back Becca's father, but he could honor the man's memory by raising his daughter right, by teaching her that justice mattered, that truth mattered, that some debts were worth paying no matter the cost. Some debts, Nathaniel reflected, could only be paid forward. Did this story make you think about the different kinds of debts we owe each other? Do you believe redemption is possible even after the worst mistakes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you believe stories about finding family in unexpected places need to be heard, don't forget to follow the Frontline Voices.